The question that everybody is asking, how will XRP consolidate the global banking system? An article by Verson from Black Swan Capitalist. I thought there was a lot of value in here. Let's just jump right in. To truly understand how XRP can reach a valuation that reflects its role in the future financial system, you have to look beyond the speculation and the noise. It isn't about market trends or hype cycles. This is about a story about infrastructure, adoption, legal clarity, and the necessity, all advancing with quiet and unstoppable momentum. As I've said many times, XRP is not like any other crypto. It's not just another digital asset. If you're paying attention, you'll see it gradually becoming the foundation of a multi-$100 trillion financial framework, one step at a time. Building real-time payments corridors with RippleNet and on-demand liquidity. For starters, the true foundation behind XRP's rise is Ripple's focus on solving one of the most persistent inefficiencies in today's outdated monetary system and cross-border payments. Traditional systems like SWIFT still rely on nostro-vostro accounts where banks are forced to pre-fund foreign accounts with large sums of capital. This traps trillions of dollars that could be used more productively. It also slows settlement from seconds to days while adding unnecessary costs and counterparty risk, especially when routing through the US dollar. And I've seen numbers as high as, 15 to $25 trillion locked up globally in nostro vostro accounts. This is really something that will help financial institutions unlock all of this value to be using it. Imagine your bank offering more business loans or student loans or investing into a community that that specific bank is focused on. There's a lot of good that could be done with this money. And imagine the GDP growth in all of these countries when this value can come back in. Also, banks have a little bit of a liquidity problem too. This solves a lot of different issues. Of course, the legacy banks are the ones here that would be the biggest target. Let's jump back in. RippleNet and its on-demand liquidity products solve this by using XRP as a neutral bridge asset. Instead of holding pre-funded accounts around the world, a bank can convert its local currency into XRP, send it across the ledger in seconds, and convert it into a destination currency in real time. No pre-funding, no middleman, no exposure to counterparty risk tied to dollar volatility, just instant settlement with far less friction. That alone changes the game. Woohoo, that was good. Ripple hasn't been making noise in the crypto space like so many others. It's been making real progress for over a decade, corridor by corridor. As the US falls behind, this infrastructure has gone live across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. These aren't pilot tests. These are active, regulated payment lanes where real money moves daily over the XRP rails. Now zoom out. Every corridor is a direct replacement for outdated SWIFT infrastructure. And as those corridors scale, so does the amount of XRP required to maintain liquidity and throughput. That's just one way organic institutional demand for XRP begins consolidating global value flows, one integration at a time. And so when you imagine all of these different payment corridors all over the world, you're going to have a select amount of XRP for each corridor. You're not just going to have this like group of XRP and it's going to go out and do this corridor, then this corridor. They're going to leave it in these corridors. And so the more lanes that open up here, the more XRP that's going to be needed for each of these lanes / corridors. It says, now zoom out. Whoa, did it zoom out automatically? Like what? That was kind of strange. Okay. Let me get back to this. Now zoom out. Every corridor is a direct replacement for outdated SWIFT infrastructure, and those corridors scale. So does the amount of XRP required to maintain the liquidity and throughput, Now that's just one way organic institutional demand for XRP begins consolidating global value flows, one integration at a time. Now let's get into this navigating regulatory frameworks and gaining legal acceptance worldwide. One of the biggest hurdles for any digital asset aiming for global adoption is regulatory clarity. The SEC's lawsuit against Ripple didn't just delay the adoption in the US, it strategically kept XRP out of public reach while the rest of the world positioned itself ahead of the largest economy on earth. But instead of folding, Ripple shifted its focus globally. And here's where it gets suspicious. While the SEC was suing Ripple, the very institutions behind the lawsuit were quietly adopting the underlying technology. If that doesn't raise a red flag, I don't know what will. Today, Ripple holds licenses and compliance certifications across dozens of jurisdictions, including Singapore, the European Union, the UAE, and so much more. This matters because institutional adoption doesn't happen without legal certainty. So when you think about the lawsuit, don't get distracted. It's just noise. As a global regulatory frameworks solidify, like the EU's MiCA and the FSRA in Abu Dhabi, and even US proposals like the Genius Act, which I believe just passed, XRP continues to grow as the only digital asset already aligned with these standards. This isn't speculation, it's on the record. And just to add more clarity, a federal judge in the US has already ruled that XRP is not a security thanks to Ripple's years of legal groundwork. That clarity alone is what unlocks sovereign and institutional integrations. Banks and governments need guardrails fits within them. That's not just a milestone, it's the legal foundation for XRP to scale the very fabric of the global financial system. Central banks and the rise of using Ripple's infrastructure. Central banks around the world have already adopted Ripple's technology and infrastructure. What they do next is another story, but what's clear is that many of these central banks are actively piloting, researching central bank digital currencies or CBDCs. We've seen about 132 countries now moving forward with some type of version of CBDC. It is rumored that Ripple is working with over 24 central banks. A lot of that stuff has not been announced yet, and so we still don't know, is it some countries in the Eurozone, like maybe France or something like that, the UK? I think more information will come out over the next few years here. It says whether those CBDCs succeed or not is not the point. The reality is billions of people will be excluded from this transition, and that alone guarantees the need for an alternative digital payment system to bridge the gap. Anyone ignoring this either doesn't have the facts or prefers to live in a fairy tale land. What's unimaginable is that digital fiat requires fast, secure, neutral settlement layer to operate across borders. Ripple is already building that layer. Ripple has a CBDC private ledger publicly documented and currently being tested by multiple central banks. This gives governments the ability to issue, manage their own digital currencies with privacy compliance built in. Everything Ripple does has compliance built in. They're one of the most compliant, regulated financial market infrastructure crypto company in the world. And I do think that is for a reason, right? The customers, the people that they're working with are at the highest level of the financial infrastructure, and they need to make sure that everything is perfect here. But here's the key. CBDCs or digital money won't operate in isolation. They need interoperability. And once again, that's where XRP comes in. So you can have all these different CBDC systems, but how do you connect them all together? Is that a bridge asset like XRP? If XRP is going to serve as the on-demand bridge asset between all forms of digital money and traditional payment systems, then central banks can simply tap into XRP liquidity as needed for real-time settlement. This is another mechanism by which XRP evolves from a payment bridge to the digital plumbing for digital money and digital assets. And as more CBDCs integrate through Ripple's infrastructure, XRP becomes the invisible engine behind cross-border value exchange. And this is already happening step by step, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. Liquidity pools deepen with growing institutional demand. The price of XRP won't rise because the hype of retail speculation. It will rise because of real growing demand for deep liquidity across a financial system shifting to real-time global settlement. Think about it. To move trillions of tokenized assets, remittances, trade finance, and interbank flows, XRP must support high volume corridors with minimal slippage. That demands massive, stable liquidity, a higher price. Liquidity providers, market makers, and institutional players will need to hold billions of dollars worth of XRP at any given time, locked up and ready to ensure instant conversion between currencies. These aren't passive holdings, they're operational infrastructure. The more critical XRP becomes for global settlement, the more consistent the buy-side pressure becomes. That creates a natural floor under XRP's price, not based on sentiment, but necessity. And as more corridors go live and transaction volumes scale, the demand for liquidity accelerates. XRP's price rises not as a speculative bet, but as a direct function of the role in the new pipes of the financial system. Talks about tokenization of assets drives exponential growth and demand. The financial world is undergoing a massive wave of digitization and tokenization. Governments and private markets are beginning to tokenize everything from currencies to public infrastructure to bonds. real estate, carbon credits, equities, and even commodities. We are starting to see conversations about debt as well. The reason that's important, debt is a $300 trillion market. Bringing that on chain could be just like, it could be game changing. And that would come on chain a lot more quickly than real estate, right? Because real estate, you have to kind of go one at a time. With debt, you can just move those markets right over. These tokenized assets will require instant settlement, deep liquidity, and seamless cross-border interoperability. And once again, XRP stands out, offering a scalable, programmable ledger and on-demand liquidity to serve as a neutral bridge that can clear these transactions globally in seconds. So as trillions of dollars in other currencies tied to tokenized assets begin moving through these systems, XRP liquidity becomes indispensable. Each tokenized trade that settles instantly on XRP rails adds to the demand. This expanded use case goes far beyond simple payments. It cements XRP's role in the future financial ecosystems and drives valuation higher, not through hype, but through critical utility. Price reflects systemic throughput and operational scale. The ultimate driver of XRP's price is the operational scale it needs to support. To settle $1 trillion in daily value, for example, the system might require holding around 10% of that value in XRP to ensure real-time settlement without slippage or price disruption. That roughly means $100 billion worth of XRP must be liquid and readily available at all times. Given XRP's fixed supply of about 50 billion tokens, this directly implies a valuation threshold of around $2,000 per XRP just to meet the liquidity requirements for that level of throughput. And as its use cases continue to expand, spanning tens of trillions in tokenized markets, CBDC interoperability, and cross-border settlements, the XRP price must rise accordingly to meet the demand. Remember, this isn't about speculation. It's about math and liquidity and throughput in the system where friction is becoming no longer acceptable. Silent and irreversible consolidation, global finance, and XRP rails. The entire transition is quiet and incremental, a snowball effect with unstoppable momentum. Even now, as we talk about this and observe what's happening around the world, there is no loud headlines announcing that XRP is becoming the global reserve currency, and yet step by step, the financial system is moving away from outdated rails. Central banks will begin using XRP's infrastructure for CBDCs, remittance corridors, and will default to on-demand liquidity, and tokenized asset markets are now being built to settle instantly through XRP. The old system are being phased out without the dramatic disruptions most people expect, because XRP powered system is faster, cheaper, and more secure, and it doesn't need to be advertised. Those who have been paying attention already understand now how this is unfolding. The consolidation has already begun and it's irreversible. XRP will no longer be viewed as just a token. It will be seen as a symbol of power in the future of finance, the liquidity layer on which the entire global financial system operates, just like the internet runs on TCP/IP protocols. Why this means XRP's price will reach unthinkable heights. To conclude, I want to emphasize one last time, the price of XRP will rise as a direct and inevitable consequence of being essential infrastructure to hundreds of trillions in global financial flows. To support that scale with reliable liquidity and real-time settlement, XRP's valuation must grow exponentially to meet the demand. At the heart of all of the simple math tied to deep liquidity, and deep liquidity is non-negotiable for instant settlement at global scale. If the price of XRP doesn't rise to reflect the magnitude of the system it was built to serve, then the system cannot function. Once you start connecting the dots between the real financial corridors, regulatory clarity, CBDC adoption, institutional liquidity needs, tokenized growth, and throughput economics, you begin to see clearly XRP is quietly becoming the foundation of tomorrow's financial system. The multi-hundred trillion dollar consolidation of finance onto XRP rails naturally drives the price to levels most people can't even begin to fathom. The XRP price must reflect the system it powers. Verson from Black Swan Capitalist. If you want to follow Verson, please do so. Well, how am I not following Verson? That's weird. There is a lot of value here in what he is saying, and it is getting exciting, guys. Obviously, when you take a look around the world, there's a lot of things happening with Ripple and XRP. The video is a little bit longer, so I'm just going to end it here. Let me know what you think down below about how XRP will consolidate the global financial system. I'm Crypto Sensei. It's an honor to be here with you. I'll see you next time. Aloha.